Hey everyone, so One Piece chapter 923 just came out. And I wanted to start this chapter discussion with a bit of a rant. Not a rant about this chapter because I love this chapter, but more so about the attitudes of the One Piece community that I've been seeing towards the start of the Wano arc, and how we can kind of reflect on that in light of, what just happened. Because my issue with a lot of the criticisms that One Piece fans, One Piece readers have with the series is that people jump to negative conclusions too quickly. That a lot of criticisms are very short-sighted in nature and complaining about what's happening right now and why you don't like what's happening right now, and not really thinking about why Oda's having the broader story develop in this way. So, especially in the early chapters of Wano, it didn't take a long time for people to start complaining, by the way. The early chapters of Wano, maybe 5 chapters in or so, 6 chapters in, people were already complaining that the stakes weren't high enough, that there wasn't enough tension, that, it wasn't exciting seeing Luffy and Zoro just easily beat up on, Urashima, a random sumo wrestler guy, and Hold'em, who was clearly, a low-level joke villain. But people somehow extrapolate that to mean that all of Wano is going to be like this, or that because Wano is starting out like this, that Oda has kind of lost his touch, and this arc that he's been hyping up for so long is going to be lame, or not as exciting as people expected, and that it was overhyped. And the thing is that, first of all, if you were complaining about, the sumo match, which I thought was a funny chapter, something that's going to be fun to read again on reread, seeing Luffy just trash Urashima. If you were complaining during that chapter instead of enjoying it for what it was, which was a fun way to start the arc, then you're ruining your own experience, because that part of the arc is gone. That easy breezy Luffy and Zoro dynamic duo, having fun, stomping fodder, having an easy, fun adventure, that part of the arc is done. It's over with. It's not coming back. From here on, shit is serious. Luffy just got his shit kicked in, Kaido has shown up, the tone of the arc has changed dramatically. So you've missed that part of the arc that was intended to be the fun little opening chapter prologue of the arc, and it was only a few chapters long, and a lot of people were already complaining about it. The other thing is that people tend to not think about things in terms of the broad context of the story. So because we get chapters weekly, which sucks. Sometimes we have to wait, an extra break week before we get a new chapter. So because of that, we get impatient quickly about when we want the action to pick up, when we want the stakes to be high again. But you have to be thinking in terms of the quality of the story, and before you can start criticizing it, think about it in terms of what's happening in the continuous story of One Piece. Think about what it would be like if you're reading the chapters back to back, and as though this were a novel. And then see if the start of the Wano arc makes sense. Because we had before this about 30 straight chapters of an extremely high-stakes Whole Cake Island finale, where we had, a long naval chase, an entire Emperor's fleet pursuing the Straw Hats, one of the longest, most intense battles in the entire series with Luffy versus Katakuri, I guess second to Luffy versus Lucci, debatably. And then, after basically 30 chapters of high-stakes tension, then we go straight into the Reverie, where it's a lot of significant big reveals, a lot of hype, a lot to process. So the story has basically been at this octane for 40 straight chapters or so. And now when we're getting to Wano, it is important, if you're thinking about it like a novel, for things to take a bit of a breather, a bit of a rest, a bit of a reset, kind of things need to slow down briefly before we get back up to that octane. So that's what those opening few chapters of Wano were. It wasn't even an extended period of time. I think we're only 10 or so chapters into Wano, and now Kaido has already shown up. But the fact that people were already complaining about that 10 chapter gap really annoys me, because it's just not thinking about things from a broader story perspective. This did need to happen. The story does need breathing time. There needs to be a bit of a reset before we jump straight back into the high stakes action. So that really annoyed me. The last thing I'll say is that in light of what just happened this chapter, this is the other complaint that I've been seeing for a long time, ever since the Straw Hats entered into the New World, which was that Luffy doesn't lose, right? Luffy seems to keep beating opponents that maybe have been overhyped and that he shouldn't be beating, right? Like, Luffy doesn't, it no longer seems like Luffy is going to face a loss in the New World. That's what people had come to believe. Did people really think that Oda has just decided that, you know, Luffy is going to win every single fight that he's going to have from here on out? People wanted Luffy to lose to Katakuri. A lot of people were upset that Luffy ended up beating Doflamingo when they wanted him to have done it, you know, with assistance from Law or whatever. A lot of people were upset that Luffy didn't get a beating from Big Mom while he was at Whole Cake Island. These were a lot of complaints that people were having. And again, why did Oda choose to have Luffy go so long having success after success after success? The idea, looking at it now, is that it makes more sense. I mean, the saying is basically the bigger they are, the harder they fall, right? So Luffy's first loss in the New World is made so much more impactful by the fact that it has been preceded by success after success after success before it. Because if you think about it, the way Oda structured it was that Luffy and the Straw Hats break into the New World, right? They burst into the New World. The first thing they do is take down Doflamingo, a super hyped major player in the New World. They shock everybody. The next thing, Luffy takes on an even bigger challenge. He goes to a Yonko's territory. He goes into a Yonko's territory, gets his friend back, breaks out of it, in the process even defeating Katakuri, a supposedly undefeated Yonko first mate, in the process getting a 1.5 billion berry bounty, being called the 5th Emperor of the Sea, and all this in like the first month of the New World. Basically, Luffy hit absolutely obscene heights in an extremely fast amount of time. And there were a lot of situations where it looked like Luffy should have experienced a failure, and he didn't. He overcame again and again and again, till he reached this obscene height where like now he's coming into Wano, and he's basically absolutely breezing through the country, stomping Kaido's subordinates left and right. He's ready to take on the big bad himself. And then finally we have Luffy come face to face and actually fight a Yonko straight up. And now, after all this buildup, after taking Luffy to these obscene heights, Oda now gives him an absolutely brutal reality check. Luffy had essentially flown super close to the sun, and Kaido brought him hard back down to earth. And yes, this was a long time coming, but it feels, at least to me, a lot more effective because it was such a long time coming. Like the same way that Crocodile was sort of, the first loss to Crocodile was sort of Luffy's, you know, welcome to the Grand Line. Kaido, in this chapter, was Luffy's basically welcome to the New World. And like, this is when Luffy has experienced that, like, up till now, he really was just playing little pirate games. Because if you think of, like, Oda, I'm at least fairly certain that Oda had planned from the start that Kaido would be Luffy's first loss in the New World. Because this is a villain that Oda had been building up since literally Thriller Bark. Like, if you go back and read Moria's final message to Luffy, before Luffy takes him out in Thriller Bark, Moria says that, fine, go to the New World, the real nightmare is waiting for you in the New World. This is the nightmare that Moria was talking about. Kaido is the nightmare that Moria was talking about. Kaido was the one that, you know, crushed Moria's dreams and destroyed, he killed his entire crew. And then the next time that we saw Kaido was when he basically beat the shit out of Kid and destroyed his dreams, and basically gave us a little preview of what's in store for Luffy by seeing what happens to Luffy's main rival out of the supernovas. And now finally, after like hundreds of chapters of Luffy like entering the New World, building his reputation, Luffy thinks that after his 2-year time skip, he's ready to take on the 4 Emperors, and he keeps having success after success to the point that he's being called the 5th Emperor of the Sea. Now Luffy finally runs into Kaido, this, you know, this dream killer, the nightmare, and that's when Luffy basically finally runs into this wall. He hits this wall that he probably didn't realize was this hard and this hard to overcome. Like, this was probably the first time Luffy has experienced such a massive gap in strength after having such confidence that he could take out this opponent. Like, Crocodile is probably the only other comparison like I can think of at the moment, but even with Crocodile, Luffy has never been just instantly beaten in one hit the way he was just now. Like, Crocodile Luffy at least was able to move around a little bit. He recovered from having, his arm dried up, he dodged some of his attacks and stuff like that. But with Kaido, it was just one hit, and that's it. Like, all the damage that Luffy suffered from Katakuri, all the damage that he suffered in the Doflamingo battle, none of that compared to, like, a single hit from Kaido. So I think looking at it in the long run, Oda had a very clear vision of what he's doing and what Kaido would bring to the story when Luffy finally encountered him. So this was a long time coming, and I hope that, like, people understand that their complaint that, like, Luffy keeps having too many victories, it's not like Oda's unaware of how he's writing his main character. Like, this has happened before where Luffy has had a lot of victories successively, and then he gets another reality check. So Kaido was a long time coming, and I'm very happy that, like, his first encounter with Kaido did go like this. So all that being said, rant's kind of over. Let's just talk about how the chapter played out. So after having said all that, kind of defending the way that Oda's developed things, I am going to throw in a little bit of a criticism. First thing I did not like about this chapter was that I feel like Oda didn't need to tease us with this Tama, you know, possibly severely injured, possibly dead situation. Because I'm fine with Oda not killing characters. I don't think you need to kill characters that often to have a good story. But I don't like when he teases that a character might be dead or should be dead or basically has faced with a life-threatening condition, and then, you know, they just turn out to be alright. Because this happens so consistently in this series that it does, when that happens so often, it does take away from the, you know, the stakes of the situation. Like, I don't believe that Tama, this, like, 10-year-old little girl, is dead and that Kaido just killed her. And also that takes away a little bit, like, sometimes it's, like, believable, like, alright, it's hard to kill someone in One Piece, but, like, this is a 10-year-old little girl with no real fighting ability, and she just got attacked by Kaido. Like, I don't care like, if Kaido touches her, she should be dead. But, I mean, she's gonna have probably survived the encounter, like 90% chance. So I don't like that. I felt like he didn't need to throw that little added fuel to Luffy's fire, because Luffy was already he was clearly pretty upset that Kaido had attacked his crewmates. So I just thought that bit of it was unnecessary. You could have had Luffy angry and calling out Kaido without throwing that in. Now, as for Kaido himself, I'd say that, one, I was a little surprised to see that Kaido actually blew away the entire top part of the mountain. So that's a little more impressive than I thought last chapter. Like, blowing away that attack blowing away the ruins of Odin's castle is, of course, impressive, but, like, this chapter, it looks like Kaido has basically destroyed the entire top part of the mountainside. So that's kind of like Enel's God's judgment, but even more large scale and even more powerful. So, I mean, that Kaido's destructive ability in his dragon form has gone up a little bit. And just seeing Kaido's size in the dragon form is pretty impressive, because I think we got finally a really good look at him. It looks like he's smaller than that giant gate, but his full length clearly covers the majority of the town. So this, like, in dragon form, he really is a absolutely massive figure. And seeing him just looming over Luffy while Luffy's calling up to him is a really cool image. Now, the thing is, we do see that Luffy does fairly well against Kaido in Kaido's dragon form. And this was a surprise to a lot of people, including myself, because, like, when we first saw, you know, Kaido show up coming down from the skies looking absolutely massive, it was like, how do you even fight this guy? Right? Turns out it's not that hard. Turns out the zone form is not that hard. And looking back at it now, it does make sense. We were caught up in the hype at the moment of the display of it, but size doesn't really matter as much in One Piece anymore at the point that, you know, Luffy's at. Like, he can one-shot the Kraken, for example. Like, how big the opponent isn't as much of a factor. Like, unless you're Zunisha sized, I suppose, it really doesn't matter. So Kaido's not necessarily stronger because he is the size of a dragon or whatever. And then the other thing to consider is that, you know, zone users have three forms, right? They've got their normal form, hybrid form, full zone form. And the full zone, the full animal form, is actually consistently the weakest form for them to be fighting in. If we think, like, Lucci, when he fought Luffy, like, he went full leopard mode for a moment, and, like, he bit Luffy, that's about it. Like, he can't fight in full leopard form. Like, that's not his best fighting form. Same with, like, Kaku. Like, he was a giraffe for a moment and then shifted to his hybrid form. Same with Jack. Like, Jack, I believe, initially showed up in his full mammoth form at Zou, and, like, he kind of got pumped by both both the Dukes back to back in his mammoth form before finally switching back to his human form. So consistently it's usually like animal form is the lowest, human form, then the hybrid form is like their best, their optimal fighting form. So yeah, Luffy kind of punching Kaido around in dragon form makes sense. Like that's not his most effective fighting form. I'm sure his hybrid form is a totally different matter though. So obviously I was a little surprised though to see Luffy was able to punch around Kaido's dragon form, but I guess makes sense. Then we see Kaido get up in his human form. And after that I'm expecting, alright, so Kaido's gonna, teach Luffy a lesson, but Luffy actually goes Gear 4th right away, not underestimating him. And then Luffy hits him a bunch and knocks him back on the ground again. And at this point I'm thinking like, alright, what's going on? Is Luffy actually like a lot stronger than I thought, or did we underestimate or overestimate Kaido up to this point? What's funny is that Luffy actually does knock Kaido down multiple times after we just had that huge battle with Katakuri, where it was such a big deal. Like Katakuri took such pride about never falling down on his back. Kaido seems pretty okay with it. Like Luffy, who is like the super low threat to him, has already knocked him on his back multiple times. But anyway, Kaido gets back up. Then the next page, obviously Luffy one-shotted, one hit, not expecting it to be, I did not expect it to be that effortless and that easy. At least Kaido used a named attack. That's the only thing that can kind of be salvaged from that. But I don't think we've seen that before. We're like just seeing Gear 4th get destroyed, like a fully healthy Gear 4th Luffy just get destroyed in one shot. That has not happened before. And like even comparing, like if we just do some comparisons, as I said earlier, the amount of damage that Doflamingo did to him, Katakuri did to him, can't compare to a single hit from Kaido. Even comparing to Big Mom, another emperor herself, at least when Luffy attacked with Gear 4th Big Mom had to use Haki to block it, right? At least she had to do that. Kaido just tanked many Gear 4th hits and then instantly defeated Luffy with a single attack of his own. Like, I feel like there are levels to this now. Maybe not Kaido's not like a full level above Big Mom or something, but like, it's clear that this is the strongest creature in the world, and that, okay, won't say that yet, but it's clear that why people believe him to be the strongest creature in the world, as the narration box says. So Kaido definitely lived up to his hype. I will say that after all this, I'll say at the end, give my little unpopular opinion. I think will probably be a very unpopular opinion among some of you, that despite all this, despite what just happened to Luffy this chapter, and despite how hopelessly outmatched he seems, to me this chapter solidifies in my mind that Luffy will be beating Kaido 1v1 at the end of this arc. I did believe it up till this point anyway, that this would not be a team effort, that Luffy wouldn't be getting some weird shadows upgrades and stuff like that. But after what happened, after the way that this confrontation between Luffy and Kaido played out, and seeing the way that Luffy was defeated, and specifically Kaido's final comment to Luffy, after beating him in such a brutal, humiliating way, Kaido saying, "What kind of king did you say you were going to be exactly, you brat?" After seeing that, I am confident that Luffy will be beating Kaido himself by the end of the arc. Because if Luffy, let's say he goes to, like, do it with the supernovas, right? If after getting beaten in such a humiliating fashion, Luffy goes, gets help from some other brats, and then they come back and beat Kaido together with the power of friendship or whatever, how does that make Luffy a king? What kind of a king is he if he does that? What does he even prove if that happens? How is that an achievement? Like, it means nothing unless Luffy does it himself in the end, I believe. Like, that's how it's been for the majority of the series. Like, even against Doflamingo, sure, Law helped at first, but at the end, Luffy had to do it himself. So, yes, maybe there will be some supernova help at first, or some other allies help at first. Maybe Kaido takes a bit of injury at the beginning of the battle. But the end of this arc, I think that this arc does not end until Luffy goes and beats Kaido in a 1v1 and does what basically everyone in the One Piece world believes to be impossible. And I'm sure many of you skeptical One Piece readers believe to be impossible, because that's what Luffy does. He does the impossible, and he does it consistently over and over again throughout the course of the series. That's what he does. He proves people wrong. So no matter how insanely difficult the challenge appears at first, and this is the moment where it's supposed to appear insanely difficult, that's what Luffy will be overcoming by the end of it all. Like 150 chapters, 200 chapters from now, Luffy will be strong enough to beat Kaido. We're seeing him right now at his absolute lowest, and his whole thing is that he comes back stronger from his defeats. And like, some people would think that that's bad writing, but it's not, because Oda does have Luffy fail a lot. Oda has, the whole thing is Luffy gets knocked down, has to get back up. He gets knocked down, he has to get back up. That happens over and over again throughout the course of the series. We see that this chapter, I mean, just look at Marineford for an extended cut of that happening over and over and over again, basically. So that is the cycle of the series. So Luffy will be coming back stronger over the next 2 weeks or a month, however long Wano ends up being. Luffy will get to the level where he can beat Kaido 1v1. And I know some of you might have complaints that, like, well, then what about Big Mom? Beating Big Mom afterwards isn't a big deal. Go check out my video on Big Mom is going to Wano if you want to see a brief snippet, I guess, of why I believe that Luffy is going to be beating Big Mom first before he gets to Kaido. It's kind of a stepping stone. That's why Oda sent her over here, I believe. And Kaido's not the ceiling of the series when it comes to villains, as some people believe. We still have Blackbeard waiting around the corner. So yes, I do think it makes sense that Luffy will be beating Kaido, the big boss of Wano, the believed to be strongest creature in the world, by the end of this arc. And he'll be doing it, for the most part, by himself. Honestly, I think that he's only 1 gear away. I think he's 1 gear and some hockey improvement away. Like, he couldn't damage Kaido clearly, but he's at least strong enough to knock him down. He's strong enough to knock him around. I think Luffy's 1 gear away. And we really don't know what leveling up he will be doing over the course of the next, several hundred chapters. So, I mean, that's my little unpopular opinion. I think a lot of people don't see that happening, but I just think that that's the way the series is written. I think that's kind of the point of, Luffy's path and what he's supposed to be doing at every stage of the story. So, if you enjoyed this video, then please like, share, and subscribe. And yeah, I'll probably be dropping a small theory video next week. My fight analysis video is still being worked on. I'm still going to say 2 weeks to be safe. So, see you all next week.